The first proof that I had supposedly forgotten my own life was waiting beside a bowl of plastic fruit. My sister had framed a photograph of me signing away my home. In it, my hair was shorter, my right hand held the pen, and my brother stood behind me with one palm resting on my chair. Elaine said the picture had been taken during one of my clear mornings. She said I had cried afterward because I could not remember doing it. The problem was that my right wrist had been broken in the accident. I remembered the cast. I remembered the surgeon warning me not to grip anything heavier than a toothbrush. I also remembered the fall, the ambulance, and every conversation after it. What I did not understand was why my family needed me to believe I did not. So I let them keep explaining. The house where I woke was a furnished rental outside Richmond, comfortable without containing anything personal. Beige walls. Matching lamps. 3 sailboat prints, even though I had always hated sailing. The bedroom closet held clothes in my size, but half the labels had been cut out. My phone was gone. So were my wallet, keys, laptop, and reading glasses. Elaine told me not to worry. "You've been sick for almost a year," she said, lowering her voice as if volume could damage my brain. "Some days you know us. Some days you don't. The doctor said routine is more important than details." She was 52, 4 years younger than me, and she had always been good at sounding reasonable. Even as a child, Elaine could take the last piece of cake and convince you she was protecting it from going stale. Our brother, Peter, stood at the kitchen counter reading emails on a phone I recognized as mine. When I looked at it, he turned the screen face down. "You gave me permission," he said. Before things got worse. Peter was 59 and had spent most of his life treating confidence as evidence. He had worked for my company twice. I had fired him once and bought out his small stake after he put his son's failing business on our vendor list without disclosure. We had not spoken for 6 months before my accident. Now he called me Ave, a nickname only our father had used. It was a small mistake. A missing purse felt too large to understand. A wrong nickname fit neatly in the hand. My name is Avery Rowe. I was 56 when I fell from a temporary stair platform during an inspection at an elementary school renovation. I founded Rowe Facilities Group 23 years earlier with a used pickup, 2 maintenance contracts, and a frightening line of credit. By the time of the accident, we serviced public buildings across 3 states. We were steady, profitable, and valuable enough that people returned my calls. I also owned Maple Hollow, the 40-acre property where Elaine, Peter, and I had grown up. Our father left it jointly to us, but neither of them wanted the taxes or repairs. I bought their shares at an appraised price 12 years before the accident and spent nearly a decade restoring the house. That history mattered because Elaine's next sentence was, "You asked us to sell Maple Hollow." She said it while pouring water into a blue plastic cup. I waited for the grief she expected from me. Instead, I asked, "Why?" "To pay for your care." Was I uninsured? Her hand stopped above the cup. Peter answered from behind me. "Insurance doesn't cover everything." That was true in a general way, which was how my family preferred to lie. They wrapped one accurate sentence around something rotten and waited for you to swallow it whole. Elaine placed 3 white tablets beside my plate. None had labels. "What are these?" "Your morning medication." "What are they called?" She smiled too quickly. "You always ask that." I did not take them. I tucked them under my tongue, drank from the cup, and later pressed them into a tissue in the bathroom. I feared they would make me sleepy, and sleep was the one thing everyone in that house seemed eager for me to do. The mirror showed a healing cut at my hairline and a pale scar along my right wrist. My face looked thinner, but not a year older. The bathroom calendar was current. Someone had crossed out every day before Tuesday. I counted backward from the date I remembered falling. 11 weeks. Not almost a year. When I came out, Elaine was making the bed in the room where I had supposedly been living for months. She tucked the corners with the awkward concentration of someone learning the space. Where was I before this? I asked. At a rehabilitation center. Which one? You don't need to push. I'm not pushing. I'm asking the name. Her eyes shifted toward the hallway. Peter appeared a few seconds later, as if she had called him without speaking. That was when I understood the first rule of my recovery. Questions were symptoms. Answers were privileges. I lowered my eyes and apologized. The relief on both their faces was almost tender. For the rest of that day, I behaved like a woman trying to gather herself from pieces. I asked Peter whether our mother was still alive, even though I had buried her 9 years earlier. I called Elaine by our cousin's name. I stared at the television remote until she showed me how to use it. Each mistake loosened something in them. Peter began taking calls in the kitchen instead of outside. Elaine stopped carrying the ring of keys clipped inside her cardigan. At dinner, they discussed Maple Hollow in front of me as though it belonged to a distant relative. The buyer kept the furniture package, Elaine said. Peter frowned. Most of it. The library pieces went separately. The library table had been built by our grandfather from chestnuts salvaged after a barn fire. Peter had carved his initials beneath it when he was 12. I kept my expression blank. Did I like that table? I asked. Elaine reached across and squeezed my hand. You loved it, she said. For one dangerous second, I almost believed the sadness in her voice meant she had tried to stop him. That was my first wrong assumption. The next morning, Elaine brought me a spiral notebook labeled Memory Practice in block letters. Inside were questions written in her handwriting. What year is it? Where do you live? Who manages your business now? The first two looked therapeutic. The third looked like due diligence. I thought this might help you feel less frightened, she said. On the table beside it, she placed a small black recorder I had used for years to dictate inspection notes at job sites. The rubber coating was worn smooth near the buttons. You used to talk into this all the time, she said. Maybe hearing your own voice will bring things back. I nearly laughed. Instead, I held it upside down and asked where the pictures came out. Elaine showed me how to record. That gift became the first honest thing she gave me. I spent the morning creating harmless entries about toast, birds outside the window, and the name of the street. Then I learned how sensitive the microphone was. From beneath a folded towel in my bedroom, it picked up normal conversation in the hallway. Peter left just before noon. Elaine said she was going to the pharmacy and locked the front door from the outside. She told me it was because I had wandered before. The moment her car backed away, I searched the kitchen. I did not tear through drawers. Disorder would warn her. I opened one cabinet at a time and replaced every object at the same angle. The key ring she had stopped guarding was not in her purse, but a small brass key was taped beneath the ceramic sugar bowl. It opened the narrow hall closet. My belongings had been packed into 2 banker's boxes and pushed behind a vacuum cleaner. The first box held clothes from the hospital, 1 shoe, a cracked pair of glasses, and the clear plastic bag that had contained my cast care instructions. The second held paper. My rehabilitation discharge packet was on top. I read it standing in the closet because my knees no longer trusted me. The dates confirmed what the bathroom calendar had suggested. I had been injured 11 weeks earlier. I had spent 12 days in the hospital and 17 days in inpatient rehabilitation, not most of a year. The notes mentioned confusion during the first days after surgery, but the final pages described me as oriented, cooperative, and able to discuss my work and home arrangements. There was no statement saying I had lost years of memory. There was no warning that I could not recognize my family. More important, the discharge plan said I was going home with temporary assistance. Not to a locked rental where my sister controlled the doors. The first useful answer brought no relief. My family had not misunderstood my condition. They had built a different condition around me. Under the medical packet was a blue legal binder. The first document transferred Maple Hollow to an entity called Hearthstone Family Holdings. Peter and Elaine were listed as its managers. The stated consideration was $10 and family support previously provided. The next document transferred all voting shares of Rowe Facilities Group into the same entity. My signature appeared on both. It was an excellent imitation. The angle was right. The capital A had the narrow top I used. Whoever copied it had seen more than a birthday card. But they had copied an old signature. 7 years earlier, after arthritis stiffened my thumb, I stopped closing the loop in the R of Rowe. On those documents, the loop was perfect. I turned to the notary page. The name meant nothing to me. The date did. According to the paper, I had signed the property transfer 2 days after the fall, while I was still in a surgical unit with my right arm immobilized and a nurse documenting who entered my room. The company transfer was dated 9 days later. I remembered that day because Elaine had visited rehabilitation and asked me where I kept the original operating agreement. She said Peter needed it for an insurance audit. I had told her it was in the file cabinet at my office. At the time, I mistook her kiss on my forehead for gratitude. The binder also contained minutes from a special company meeting I had supposedly attended by video. In those minutes, I resigned as chief executive and appointed Peter chairman. Elaine became treasurer. A consultant named Martin Vale became interim chief executive. Martin had spent 6 years advising businesses with cash flow problems. I had met him once and declined to hire him because he spoke about employees as if they were inventory. At the back of the binder was a document that had not been signed. Ratification and confirmation of prior authority. It stated that I had knowingly approved every transfer, appointment, loan, and distribution made during my recovery. It also affirmed that I was competent when the earlier papers were signed. A yellow note was attached to the front. Friday, 3 o'clock. Keep it warm. No outside counsel. That was 3 days away. I photographed nothing because I had no device. I copied dates and names into the memory notebook, disguising them as exercises. The notary became a woman I had supposedly met at church. Hearthstone became the name of a childhood dog. The amount of a company distribution became a telephone number I was trying to remember. Then I found the bank letter. Rowe Facilities Group had violated conditions on its main credit agreement. Revenue had fallen, 2 major clients had delayed renewals, and the company had made distributions to its new owners while certain financial targets were unmet. The bank reserved the right to demand additional guarantees or accelerate the debt. Peter and Elaine had not simply taken my company. They had begun draining it. A statement clipped behind the letter showed a wire to Hearthstone Family Holdings for $800,000. Another showed a payment to Peter's son's construction company. My anger came so fast that I had to sit on the closet floor. For 23 years, I had never missed payroll. During the recession, I mortgaged my house rather than lay off 15 technicians. Peter and Elaine both knew it. I wanted to carry the binder into the kitchen and make her look at every lie. It would also have been stupid. The unsigned ratification told me they were not finished. Something in their theft was weak enough that they still needed my cooperation. If I confronted them, they could move me again, destroy the binder, or tell a court that my certainty was another symptom. I returned every page to its exact position. I put the boxes back, locked the closet, and retaped the key beneath the sugar bowl. Then I took the recorder into my room and made one cheerful entry. Today I remembered we had a dog named Hearthstone, I said. When Elaine came home, she listened to it twice. Her smile looked proud. Mine felt like work. She noticed my red eyes and sat beside me on the bed. What happened? I remembered Mom's funeral. The lie hurt because the memory was real, our mother's gloves inside her handbag, Elaine gripping my arm during the hymn, Peter arriving late. Elaine's face softened. She brushed my hair away from the scar near my temple. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know this is frightening. For a moment, she sounded like my sister again. Not a caretaker performing patience. Not a beneficiary checking an asset. Just Elaine. That made what came later harder, not easier. The next afternoon, Peter brought Martin Vale to the rental. Martin wore no tie and carried a slim leather folder. He introduced himself as an old friend from the company, though we had met only once. His eyes moved over the room before they settled on me, the notebook, the plastic cup, the locked front door. How are the memories coming? He asked. Some are fuzzy. Do you remember asking your family to take over Rowe facilities? I looked at Peter. Do we sell furniture? Peter's mouth tightened. Martin smiled without warmth. Buildings need furniture. So you work for me? I'm helping the company while you recover. He opened the folder and placed a one-page document on the coffee table. It was not the ratification from the binder. It was a plain language summary stating that I understood Peter and Elaine had managed my affairs at my request. We're planning a small gathering at Maple Hollow on Friday, he said. Nothing formal. A chance to celebrate your progress and make sure your wishes are clear. Is Maple Hollow the house with the table? Elaine answered before he could. Yes. I watched her thumb rub the edge of her wedding ring. She did that when she wanted to leave a conversation but felt unable to. Martin slid the summary toward me. You don't need to sign today. Just read it if you feel up to it. The page described my accident as occurring 14 months earlier. They had repeated the false timeline in writing, but not inside any medical record. It gave them a story broad enough to explain missing assets, changed management, and my isolation. It also gave them room to claim that any memory contradicting them belonged to the wrong year. I traced the first line with my finger. Was I difficult? I asked. Peter gave a short laugh. You've always been difficult. Elaine looked down. Martin did not laugh. You were under stress. Your family stepped in. There it was, the explanation they wanted to feel true. Not theft. Rescue. Peter believed I had built my life by denying him his proper place. Elaine believed years of smoothing over our conflicts entitled her to something more than gratitude. Martin believed a distressed company justified aggressive decisions. Each of them could stand beside the same lie and call it service. After Martin left, Peter went to the kitchen and poured himself a drink. Elaine followed him. I stayed on the sofa, turning pages in the memory notebook while the recorder ran beneath a cushion. Martin's car had barely reached the street when Peter said, "She's sharper than you told me." She has good hours, Elaine replied. She recognized Maple Hollow. She recognized a table. And she asked about the medication yesterday. A cabinet closed. Elaine lowered her voice. The doctor never said she had long-term memory loss. Peter answered, he said confusion was possible. For a few days. We never put his name on anything. My pencil stopped moving. Elaine said, this was supposed to protect her while we fixed the company. No. It was supposed to protect all of us from Avery changing her mind every time she felt guilty. She didn't change her mind, Peter. He waited before answering. No, she just never made the right one. That sentence closed the question I had asked myself since seeing the photograph. Elaine had not been dragged into Peter's plan after the fact. She knew the diagnosis was false. She knew the timeline was false. Whatever regret she felt had not stopped her from using either one. Then Peter said, Friday is the only thing that matters. Once she confirms the transfers and the guarantees, the bank extension goes through. After that, even if she starts remembering, it becomes a family dispute instead of a control problem. And if she refuses? She won't. You'll tell her she already agreed. The recorder captured the clink of ice against his glass. It did not capture my face. That was fortunate, because I had finally understood why they were still keeping me close. The forged documents had given them possession. Friday's signature was meant to give them legitimacy. And the bank was not merely threatening their plan. It was the hinge holding everything together. The bank letter reminded me of one asset they had not found, a foreign reserve account from an overseas contract, disclosed to my tax counsel but absent from daily reports. I could still reach it, if I could get out long enough to contact someone I trusted. I had one chance to reach the person who knew that account existed, and it arrived disguised as pain. The discharge packet listed an orthopedic follow-up for Thursday morning. Elaine had removed the card, but the clinic name and time remained on the final page. At breakfast, I rubbed my right wrist and let the spoon fall. It hurts, I said. Elaine reached for it. You overused it yesterday. I don't remember yesterday. Peter looked up from his phone. The line worked exactly as I hoped. They could dismiss pain, but not the version of me they had created. If my confusion appeared to be worsening before the signing, they needed a professional to calm me. Elaine offered to call a nurse. I shook my head and stared at the framed photograph. What if I broke it again? Peter's patience lasted less than a minute. Take her to the appointment, he said. We can't have this becoming a scene tomorrow. Elaine drove. She kept my door locked and my handbag behind her seat. I brought the recorder inside the memory notebook because she had begun treating both as harmless therapy tools. The surgeon who had repaired my wrist was Dr. Lena Shah. I remembered her immediately, silver hoops, direct questions, no habit of speaking around the patient. Elaine tried to follow us into the examination room. Dr. Shah stopped at the doorway. I speak to adult patients alone first. Elaine's smile held because a nurse was watching. The moment the door closed, Dr. Shah asked me the date, my location, and why I was there. I answered all three. Then I told her my family was claiming I had lost nearly a year of memory, though the accident had happened 11 weeks earlier. I told her they had taken my phone and documents, locked the house when they left, and presented transfers I could not have signed. She checked my chart, then asked the same questions in different forms. She asked whether I felt physically threatened, whether I wanted staff to call law enforcement, and whether I had somewhere safe to go. I don't know yet. The answer embarrassed me. I owned property, accounts, and a company with my name on the building, yet I could not name one place where Peter would not look. Dr. Shah offered to bring in the clinic social worker. I asked for 10 private minutes with a telephone first. The number I remembered belonged to Miriam Cole, the tax attorney who had structured our overseas contracts and reviewed my estate plan. She answered on the third ring. Avery? Hearing my name spoken without caution almost broke my composure. I gave her the false timeline, transfer binder, Hearthstone Family Holdings, and signed ratification, bank letter, and Friday gathering. The reserve account is intact, she said. No one has requested access. How much? Just under $3.1 million after the last tax payment. It was not enough to replace everything they had taken, but it was enough to create options. Miriam had already received notices because I had missed 2 estate plan reviews. She had called my office and been told I was medically unavailable. Peter then sent a letter claiming all professional contacts should go through him. She had not accepted the instruction, but she had lacked authority to force contact. I need you to document that I am speaking clearly, I said. I need a physician's record, your written instructions, and independent confirmation that you are not acting under pressure. Dr. Shaw provided the first. A clinic administrator witnessed the second. For the third, Miriam asked questions only I could answer about past filings, transfers, and a dispute we had settled years earlier. Then she explained the bank letter. Rowe Facilities had not merely missed a financial target. Peter and Martin had taken a large owner distribution after the bank warned them not to. The workout group was considering whether to demand repayment, require new guarantees, or sell the loan. Can I buy it? Not as Rowe. Your control is disputed. But an entity you own can offer to acquire the debt if the bank is willing to assign it. How long? Longer than a phone call. Shorter if they already want out. We need proof of funds, diligence, conflict review, and terms the bank can defend. Start. Miriam paused. If they learn you are behind the offer, they will call it retaliation. Then they do not learn. She agreed to form a separate acquisition company with a neutral name and approach the bank through restructuring counsel. Nothing would be final without my approval, and no one would promise a purchase the bank had not accepted. It was the first plan that did not depend on proving Peter guilty first. With Dr. Shaw present, I signed a limited engagement authorizing Miriam to protect the reserve account, obtain records, challenge disputed transfers, and pursue the debt purchase. I gave no one control over my medical decisions or daily life. Before I left, the clinic copied my recordings and sent them to Miriam through a secure link. They were not enough to win anything by themselves. They were enough to preserve what Peter and Elaine believed existed only inside my recorder. Dr. Shaw urged me not to return to the rental. I nearly agreed. Then Miriam asked what they expected me to sign Friday. A ratification of everything they have done. If you disappear now, they may use the documents they control and say you became confused after outside interference. I can challenge them, but the first hours will be messy. Going back was dangerous. Staying away would warn them before we knew the full transaction they were trying to protect. The choice was mine. I returned to the waiting room and let Elaine help me into my coat. What did the doctor say? She asked. That I should not lift anything. Her shoulders dropped. On the drive back, she told Peter over speakerphone that the appointment had gone well. I watched the city pass through the window and felt the cost of my decision settle into my body. I had found a door. Then I locked myself back inside with them. Peter had moved the gathering to Maple Hollow. He called it a recovery celebration, but no one had invited a friend of mine. The guests were 2 company directors, the bank's workout officer, Martin Vale, Elaine's husband, and a videographer Peter claimed was preserving a family moment. A family moment did not require a banker. We arrived Friday shortly afternoon. Seeing Maple Hollow again was worse than seeing the transfer papers. The porch rail I had repaired with my father was wrapped in white ribbon. My mother's brass planter had been moved to hide a crack in the front step. Inside, photographs of Peter's children occupied the table where I kept mail for the conservation group. They had not sold the house. They had edited me out of it. Elaine took me upstairs to the room that had once been mine. A pale blue dress hung from the wardrobe. Beside it sat low shoes and a card telling me what to say if I became nervous. I am grateful my family protected me. I chose these changes while I was well. I trust Peter and Elaine to continue managing my affairs. The sentences were printed large. You want me to read this? Only if you lose your words. Did I choose the blue dress? Elaine looked at it too long. You used to like blue. I opened the wardrobe and found 3 of my old coats pushed to the back. One still held a hardware store receipt dated 6 months before my fall. Was I living here when I got sick? No. Then why are my things here? Her face tightened. Because this was always the family house. Not my house. The family house. I sat on the bed and let the card slide from my fingers. Did I make you leave? The question was not an act. Years earlier, after I bought her share, Elaine had stayed at Maple Hollow whenever her marriage became difficult. She would arrive with 1 suitcase and leave before dawn 3 days later. I never asked what happened between her and Daniel. I told myself privacy was kindness. She folded the dress across her arms. You bought Peter and me out when we were exhausted, she said. Dad had just died. The taxes were due. You had cash and lawyers. You had independent appraisals. I had grief. Her voice remained quiet, but the old softness was gone. You got the company. You got the house. You got to be the competent one. I got phone calls when Mom fell and Peter needed money. I paid what your shares were worth. That is what you say when you want numbers to end a conversation. I saw the part of her grievance that money had not addressed. Elaine had cared for our parents more often because her life was nearby and mine was consumed by the company. I paid nurses, bills, and repairs. She sat through appointments, repeated instructions, and absorbed fear no invoice recorded. I had thanked her. I had never asked what it cost. That did not excuse what she had done. It explained why Peter's story had found a place inside her. Did I leave you anything? I asked. She looked toward the closed door. There was the deeper reason. Miriam had reviewed my estate plan 3 years before. If I died, Peter and Elaine received fixed gifts. Maple Hollow would pass to a land preservation trust, and most company shares would fund an employee ownership plan. I made those choices after Peter's vendor scheme, convinced neither sibling wanted responsibility. They had found the plan. You were giving the house away, Elaine said. To preserve it. To strangers. To an organization that could not sell it for development. Her mouth twisted. You decided the land deserved a future more than your own family did. Before I could answer, footsteps approached. Elaine lowered her voice. Peter said the transfer would only restore what should have stayed ours. He said the company would remain intact and you would be cared for. And the signature? She closed her eyes. I only did the first 2. The sentence was so small I nearly missed its weight. Elaine had forged my name on the property and share transfers. Not Peter. Not Martin. Elaine. She saw understanding reach me and stepped back. You asked me to help before the surgery, she said quickly. You were frightened. You said you did not want the bank or board taking over. I said that? You said pieces of it. Before or after the pain medication? Her silence answered. The recorder was running inside the notebook on the dressing table. I did not look at it. Why the photograph? It was from a refinancing dinner 7 years ago. Peter had it enlarged. We thought familiar pictures would keep you calm. You thought a lie would teach me what to remember. I thought once you were stronger, we could explain. And tomorrow kept becoming next week. Her chin trembled, but her voice did not. You always make it sound simple after deciding what everyone should have done. The door opened before I could respond. Martin entered without knocking. The bank is early, he said. Elaine wiped beneath one eye and carried the dress into the bathroom. Martin watched her close the door. You are having a productive afternoon, he said. I remembered my bedroom. This was your bedroom when you were young. And later? Later is complicated. He crossed to the wardrobe and removed a gray folder from behind the coats. He thought I was watching Elaine's shadow beneath the bathroom door. I watched the folder. On its tab were the words Northline Asset Purchase. Martin placed it in his case and snapped the lock. That name was not in any company record I had seen. When he left to greet the bank officer, I asked Elaine to help with my zipper. She emerged with her face composed. Who is Northline? Her fingers stopped at my back. I don't know. I believed her. Peter had told Elaine the company would remain in the family. Martin was preparing to sell something she did not know was for sale. The false memory story began as a way to take my estate before my plan could control it. Now Peter was using it to trade away the future Elaine believed she was saving. Downstairs, Peter had arranged the library like a hearing disguised as lunch. The bank officer, Sharon Bell, sat near the windows. Martin occupied my father's chair. 2 directors had been placed where the camera could capture them nodding. Peter guided me to the center sofa. Everyone is here because they care about you. Sharon asked whether I understood why she was present. I looked at Elaine. For the party? Peter touched my shoulder. Avery has good periods and tired periods. The bank had been told I could confirm transfers, yet needed Peter to answer for me. Martin opened the ratification binder. We only need confirmation that her family acted with authority during recovery. Raymond Cho, a director who had served with me for 9 years, watched instead of reading. He knew I disliked being touched while someone else spoke for me. I lifted Peter's hand from my shoulder. What happens if I don't remember giving authority? That is why we saved your earlier instructions. Which instructions? Martin slid the signature page toward me. Miriam and I had a simple plan. I would not sign. At 2:15, I would request a private call. If refused, I would state that I did not consent. Then Peter picked up the memory notebook. You wrote things down so you would not become overwhelmed. I had left it upstairs beside the recorder. He opened to the page where I had disguised dates as memories. Hearthstone was our dog? My pulse climbed into my throat. He read the false telephone number created from the distribution amount. At the back, the notary's name had left an indentation. He had searched my room after the clinic. You remember more than you say, he said quietly. To the guests, he sounded hopeful. I remember you reading my phone. His smile disappeared. Martin reached for the binder. Perhaps today is not the right day. It is exactly the right day, Sharon said. Ms. Rowe, do you want to speak with me without your family present? Peter answered first. That would frighten her. Raymond said, she can answer for herself. Power shifted away from Peter. Fear made him impatient. He stood and announced that I needed rest. When Sharon objected, he produced a health care authorization bearing my signature and said my doctors had instructed the family to prevent stressful questioning. It was another forgery, but no one there could authenticate it. Sharon refused the bank extension. Raymond adjourned the board meeting. The videographer stopped recording. The gathering collapsed before I could speak. That should have helped me. Instead, it moved the conflict somewhere without witnesses. Elaine followed me upstairs. Peter came behind her and locked the bedroom door. He took the recorder from beneath the notebook without searching. Did the clinic teach you how to use this? He played the kitchen recording. His own voice filled the room. Once she confirms the transfers and guarantees, the bank extension goes through. Elaine stared at him. You told me you checked her things. I did. Not well enough. Peter deleted every file and held up the recorder as if he had removed the past itself. The copies were with Miriam, but my advantage depended on letting him believe destruction still worked. Who did you call? No one. He searched my coat and found only clinic instructions. The engagement remained with Miriam. The capacity note was already in my medical record. Get her bag, he told Elaine. The room at Greenridge is ready. Greenridge was a private rehabilitation center 2 counties away. Peter had planned to send me there only if the signing failed. You said she was coming home after today, Elaine said. She is confused, deceptive, and unsafe. She recorded us because we lied to her. Peter stepped close enough that she had to look up. You signed the transfers. Do not develop principles halfway through. Elaine flinched. Her forgery kept her obedient because any move against him exposed her first. The guests were leaving. Sharon had stopped the extension, but she had not restored my company. Martin still controlled daily operations. Peter still held the shares on paper. Their position was weaker, not gone. My call with Miriam had started a process. It had not purchased $1 of debt or removed a signature from the public record. Peter packed my clothes while Elaine stood by the window. I could have told her the recordings survived. I could have asked her to help me walk out. Part of me still wanted the sister from our mother's funeral to choose me without being offered rescue. That hope was another form of delay. Did Peter show you Northline? I asked. He stopped folding. Elaine turned. What is Northline? Martin appeared in the doorway. No one answered. The silence confirmed Peter and Martin had a transaction of their own. Elaine's family restoration was only the bridge. Peter recovered first. A buyer for one non-essential division. Martin's face told me the lie was too small. Elaine moved toward the door. You said nothing would be sold. You wanted the house, Peter replied. You have the house. For a second, she looked ready to tell me everything. Then Peter said, Avery recorded you admitting the signatures. He did not know the file survived. Elaine believed it did not. The threat worked because guilt needs no evidence to feel trapped. She picked up my bag. I did not ask her to save me. Peter took me through the side entrance and placed me in Martin's car. Greenridge was expecting a confused woman whose family said she wandered, lied, and became distressed around financial matters. As we pulled away from Maple Hollow, Peter sat beside me holding the emptied recorder. My evidence was miles away. My debt offer had not been accepted. The people controlling my company now knew I remembered. Then Peter's phone lit up with a message from Sharon Bell. He read it twice and turned the screen away. The bank rejected the extension. For the first time since I woke in the rental, his hand began to shake. He thought the bank was closing in on him. He did not know it had received my offer. Greenridge did not look like a prison. That was what made it useful. The entrance had soft chairs, framed landscapes, and a receptionist who called Peter Mr. Rowe before asking for my name. He handed over a thick folder. Martin spoke quietly about confusion, wandering, financial fixation, and sudden distrust of family. When the intake coordinator asked whether I knew where I was, I gave her the facility name, county, date, and the route from Maple Hollow. Peter interrupted. She rehearses facts. That is part of the problem. The coordinator, Celia Marks, drew a line beneath something on her form. Then she asked whether I consented to admission. No. Peter placed the healthcare authorization on the desk. Celia read it twice. This allows you to communicate with providers. It does not authorize involuntary placement. Martin leaned forward. Her family has managed her care for months. Then you should have an order or a physician's certification. They had neither. For the first time, Peter's certainty failed in front of someone who understood the limits of paper. He called me unsafe. Celia asked whether I had threatened anyone, could feed and dress myself, and understood my basic needs. His answers made his claim smaller each time. Are you willing to remain for a voluntary evaluation while we clarify this? She asked me. Going with Peter was impossible. Walking out alone without identification or money would give him another story to tell. I will stay for an independent evaluation. I do not consent to my brother controlling my records or communications. Peter stared as though a chair had spoken. Celia asked him and Martin to leave. A security officer appeared when they hesitated. In private, I gave her Dr. Shaw's name and Miriam's number from memory. I explained the false timeline, forged transfers, recorder, and bank meeting. Miriam answered with 2 attorneys already on the line. While I was being driven across the county, she had filed an emergency civil petition challenging the transfers and seeking temporary restrictions on further sales. She also sent preservation notices to Rowe facilities, Hearthstone, Martin, Peter, Elaine, the notary, and the videographer from Maple Hollow. The court has not ruled, she warned. But everyone now knows deletion may carry consequences. Peter had erased the recorder less than an hour too late. The bank had not accepted our purchase offer. It had authorized due diligence and requested final proof of funds by Monday. The secured balance was just over $2.4 million, plus fees. My reserve account could cover it, but doing so would leave little money for litigation, payroll support, or repairs at Maple Hollow. Buying the debt would not return my shares. It would make my new entity the secured lender, able to withhold consent from any sale of pledged company assets to Northline. It also meant I could lose most of the reserve if Rowe failed. Miriam asked whether I still wanted to proceed. I thought about the technicians whose retirement accounts depended on the company surviving. Peter had made Rowe sick, then planned to sell its healthiest pieces before anyone could stop him. Fund the purchase. The decision frightened me more than the forged documents. Those had been forced on me. This risk belonged entirely to me. Greenridge's medical director examined me that evening. She reviewed Dr. Shaw's notes, tested attention and recall, and made me explain the difference between the disputed share transfer and the bank debt. The transfer claims my family owns the company, I said. The purchase only makes my entity the lender. She asked why I had pretended to forget. People speak differently around someone they believe cannot keep a fact. Did that increase your danger? Yes. Would you do it again? I considered the locked rental and Peter deleting the recorder. Not without telling someone where I was. By midnight, Greenridge documented no basis for involuntary confinement and found that I could make my own decisions. They gave me a telephone and told Peter I could leave. He stayed in the parking lot and called Elaine. She arrived after 1 a.m. wearing the same clothes from Maple Hollow. Her eyes were swollen, but her voice was steady. Peter says you are trying to destroy the company. I am trying to stop him from selling it. He says Northline is only buying the janitorial division. Did he show you the agreement? No. Did he show you what happens to Maple Hollow if the bank accelerates the loan? Her face changed. Peter had used Hearthstone's assets as support for the extension. The house Elaine believed she had reclaimed was tied to the debt they expected me to ratify. He told me the house was protected. He needed you to believe that long enough to sign my name. She looked through the glass doors toward Peter's car. I did not create the healthcare document. I did not know about Greenridge. I believe you. Relief crossed her face too early. Believing that does not erase what you did. She nodded, then placed a flash drive on the table. It held scans Peter sent while I was in rehabilitation, old signature pages, draft transfers, and messages showing where he wanted my name placed. There were photographs of the documents before notarization. I kept them because I thought Peter might blame me. That was not courage. It was self-protection. It was also evidence. She had copied the Northline agreement from the library printer. Northline was not buying one division. It was buying customer contracts, equipment, and a Rowe name at a price that would cover the bank while leaving almost nothing behind. A disclosure page listed Martin Vale as an indirect investor. Peter had promised Elaine a restored inheritance while arranging to sell my company to the man who helped him take it. The same control that kept Elaine obedient had finally shown her she was disposable. Elaine wanted me to promise that helping would keep her out of prison. I could not. I am not the prosecutor, and I will not trade the truth for your version of loyalty. Her mouth tightened. Then why should I give you anything else? Because Peter will use your signature whether you help me or not. Because Martin intends to sell what you thought you were saving. And because you still get to decide whether the worst thing you did is also the last thing you do. She looked older under the lobby lights. I need a lawyer. Yes. Not Miriam. No. Your own. Celia let Elaine use a private office. By dawn, an attorney from Richmond had told her to preserve her devices, stop speaking to Peter, and surrender nothing without copies and receipts. Elaine gave the flash drive and Northline agreement to Miriam through formal channels instead of handing them directly to me. That detail mattered later. Evidence passed between angry relatives can be called altered. Evidence logged by separate counsel is harder to dismiss. I left Greenridge through a staff exit and stayed in a hotel reserved under Miriam's firm account. For the first time in weeks, I locked a door from the inside. Sleep still would not come. On Monday morning, my new entity, Bellwether Recovery LLC, wired the purchase price to the bank's escrow agent. The bank completed its final review, documented why the assignment was commercially reasonable, and transferred the Rowe facility's loan and related security rights. At 10:17, Bellwether became the secured lender. At 10:26, Miriam sent notice that Bellwether did not consent to the Northline sale, owner distributions, additional liens, or transfers outside ordinary business. At 10:41, Martin announced to senior staff that a hostile creditor was trying to destroy the company. He did not know the creditor was me. Peter responded with speed. He filed a declaration claiming I had become paranoid after outside lawyers contacted me. He attached the forged healthcare authorization, selected rehabilitation notes from my first confused days, and a statement from the notary insisting she had witnessed me sign the transfers by video. The notary was real. Her account was not. According to her statement, I had appeared on a screen, answered questions, and confirmed my identity while Elaine held the documents. She had not been in the hospital. She claimed the video file was accidentally overwritten during a software update. That explained why Peter needed the staged photograph and Friday ratification. The original notarization rested on a remote appearance no one could now review. It also created a new problem. Elaine's photographs showed unsigned papers before the notary session, but they did not prove who appeared on the call. Peter's filing was enough to delay the judge. The court restricted major transfers temporarily but did not restore my voting control. It ordered expedited document exchange and scheduled a capacity and ownership hearing several weeks away. Several weeks were dangerous. A company can lose customers faster than a court can read a binder. Martin froze hiring, blamed Bellwether for vendor delays, and warned employees that layoffs might follow. Peter contacted our largest clients and described the dispute as a family breakdown caused by my medical decline. 2 paused renewals. A third demanded proof that Rowe would remain operational. Bellwether could declare default and pursue remedies, but forcing a sale or receivership would hurt the people I was trying to protect. Peter understood my boundary. He used employees as a shield because he knew I would not burn the company to recover it. My decision to buy the debt gave me leverage, but it also tied my remaining money to an organization he was willing to damage. That was his earned advantage. Raymond Cho called me from a personal phone. The board had received Bellwether's notice, but Martin refused to reveal the lender's beneficial owner. He claimed confidentiality prevented it. Can the lender demand an independent restructuring officer? Raymond asked. Under the loan documents, yes. Will it? Only if the board supports the appointment. Martin still had 3 directors aligned with him. Raymond had himself and 1 uncertain vote. The 7th seat, mine, was considered vacant because of the disputed transfer. We needed proof of conflict strong enough to move a director before the court resolved ownership. The Northline disclosure named Martin as an indirect investor, but he argued that his interest was contingent and fully disclosed to Peter as acting chairman. Peter approved it on Hearthstone's behalf. On paper, 2 people who had taken control from me had authorized each other. Unfair was not the same as automatically void. Miriam's forensic team found the next opening in an ordinary email attachment. Before my accident, Rowe required board approval for any related party sale above a set amount. Martin had circulated a redlined policy after taking over. The threshold was raised, and the definition of related party narrowed. The document metadata showed it was created on his laptop 3 days before the Northline agreement was drafted. The meeting minutes approving that policy claimed all directors attended by telephone. Raymond had been in surgery with his wife that morning. Another director, Gloria Finch, had been delivering a lecture in Chicago. Flight records and event photographs placed her there. Martin said the meeting occurred later than the minutes reflected. Gloria did not appreciate being used as a movable fact. She demanded the full meeting record and told Raymond she would not support Northline until an independent review was complete. That gave us the uncertain vote we needed, but not permanently. Martin had already sent her Peter's medical narrative about me. That evening, the hotel phone rang. You always liked owning both sides of a negotiation, Peter said. I had not given him the number. He knew about Bellwether. Peter had learned about Bellwether through the emergency filings. Once Miriam identified my entity to defend its right to block Northline, the secret could not remain private. You bought the loan with money you hid from your own company, he said. It was disclosed to my tax counsel and auditors. You let us believe Rowe was trapped. You were not entitled to a list of assets you had failed to steal. He changed tactics. Approve Northline, he said, and he would return Maple Hollow to me. Hearthstone would keep a minority interest in Rowe, Elaine would receive a life tenancy in the guest cottage, and everyone would release everyone else. It sounded almost reasonable until I asked what would remain of the company. The divisions that make sense. For whom? For the people willing to save them. Martin's language had become Peter's. Assets were healthy only after employees, history, and obligation had been removed from the sentence. No. You will lose the house in litigation and the company in default. Then stop damaging both. The next morning, Martin announced that Northline would withdraw unless the sale closed within 48 hours. He delayed a vendor payment and told managers Bellwether had blocked operating funds, though the loan assignment had not restricted ordinary expenses. Rumors of missed payroll spread before lunch. Peter was no longer trying to prove he could manage Rowe. He was proving that refusing him carried a cost. Gloria called an emergency board meeting. She wanted Bellwether's restructuring proposal, Martin's disclosures, and an independent report on cash. Miriam advised me to attend remotely. I went in person. The conference room looked smaller than I remembered. My nameplate was gone, but the pale rectangle beneath it remained. Peter sat at the head of the table. "You are not a director," he said. Raymond answered, "She is the beneficial owner of the secured lender and has been invited for that purpose." Martin presented declining renewals, vendor pressure, and the danger created by an undisclosed hostile lender. Every problem that began after my accident appeared on a slide as though it had arrived with me. Rowe could meet payroll, but only by postponing 2 vendor payments. Northline's price would eliminate the bank debt and provide a short transition fund. It would also transfer our best contracts to a buyer in which Martin held an interest. He called that interest an incentive. Gloria called it a conflict. Peter responded by playing video from Maple Hollow. The videographer had captured me asking whether Rowe sold furniture, pretending not to recognize the house, and reading from the memory notebook. Edited together, the clips made me look fragile and easily guided. "This is the woman directing Bellwether," Peter said. "She concealed her condition while acquiring leverage over her own company. My deception had given him material because I had chosen it. There was no honest way around that. I pretended to forget," I said. Peter and Elaine had taken my devices, controlled transportation, locked the rental when they left, and told me the accident happened almost a year earlier. I believed confronting them before preserving evidence would put me at greater risk. Peter spread his hands. "That explanation was created by counsel. So listen to the explanation you gave when you believed I could not understand it." Miriam connected her laptop to the room system and played the kitchen recording from the moment Peter entered until the conversation ended. Elaine's voice, "The doctor never said she had long-term memory loss." Peter's answer, "He said confusion was possible." Elaine, "For a few days." Then came his sentence about Friday turning a control problem into a family dispute. No one reacted theatrically. Gloria removed her glasses. Raymond stopped writing. Martin's attorney leaned toward him and whispered. Peter said the recording was illegal. Miriam replied that admissibility would be decided elsewhere. The board did not need to determine criminal guilt to judge whether management had been candid. She presented the Greenridge evaluation, Dr. Shaw's records, the discharge timeline, hospital restrictions on my right wrist, and the clinic's secure copy log. Then came Elaine's photographs of the unsigned transfers and Peter's messages directing placement of my old signature. Elaine was not in the room. Her attorney had submitted authenticated copies with a statement limited to facts her devices supported. She admitted applying my signature and acknowledged that I had never instructed her to transfer the property or shares. Peter stared at the screen. "You have no idea what she told me privately." "I remember what I told her in rehabilitation." She asked where the operating agreement was. I said the fire cabinet at my office. I did not authorize a transfer. I did not discuss Hearthstone. I did not attend a company meeting by video. I did not sign a healthcare authorization. I gave dates, staff names, therapy schedules, and details from the days his papers claimed I was signing documents. Not to perform memory, but to anchor each denial to a record someone else could verify. Martin tried to return the discussion to liquidity. Gloria stopped him. The metadata from his amended related party policy appeared next. So did proof that the supposed board meeting included directors who were not present. His interest in Northline had been concealed in the first draft and added only after outside counsel requested disclosure. The board voted 5-1 to suspend Martin, reject Northline, and appoint an independent restructuring officer acceptable to Bellwether. Peter voted against. One director abstained. The vote did not return my shares, but it ended his ability to use company operations as a private weapon. He stood before the meeting adjourned. This company is still owned by Hearthstone. For the moment, Gloria said. 3 weeks later, the ownership hearing began. Peter's attorney argued that every inconsistency could be explained by trauma, family informality, or imperfect record-keeping. The notary repeated that she had seen me on video. A handwriting expert hired by Hearthstone said the signatures resembled historical samples. Then the hospital's access records were introduced. At the exact time of the first notarization, I was undergoing a documented imaging procedure with my right wrist secured. The notary platform logs showed the call originated from an account created with Peter's office email and an internet address connected to his building. For the second document, rehabilitation notes placed me in a supervised therapy session. The platform showed no identity verification beyond a scanned license Peter already possessed. The notary's certainty began shrinking. She admitted Peter had arranged both calls, supplied the documents, and assured her my camera problems were caused by the hospital network. She had seen only a dim face for a few seconds and heard most answers through a poor connection. Elaine's photographs established that the papers remained unsigned before those calls. Peter's messages showed him sending her my old signature samples afterward. A forensic document examiner found repeated tracing features in the signatures, including identical pressure gaps that natural handwriting would not reproduce. Peter continued to insist I had authorized the plan verbally. The judge asked me whether I remembered signing either transfer. Yes, Your Honor, I said. I remember that I did not. His attorney objected to the phrasing. The judge allowed the answer to stand. I explained the accident, the brief postoperative confusion, the conversation in rehabilitation, and the false year my family built around me. I admitted pretending to forget after I discovered the lie. I did not describe myself as fearless or clever. I described the locked door, unlabeled pills, missing devices, and the moment I chose evidence over confrontation. Then Miriam played the preserved recordings. Not because Peter confessed to every act. He did not. What mattered were the limits he revealed. The doctor never diagnosed long-term memory loss. The ratification was intended to convert a control problem into a family dispute, and Friday's signature mattered because the earlier papers remained vulnerable. The judge invalidated the property and share transfers and restored the ownership records pending completion of the related claims. The court continued restrictions on extraordinary transactions and required an independent accounting of Hearthstone, Rowe facilities, and payments connected to Northline. Maple Hollow returned to my name. So did my company shares. The ruling did not end everything that afternoon. Peter appealed and lost the emergency request to suspend it. The title office took time to correct the property chain. Banks reviewed every account associated with Hearthstone. The board needed formal votes to remove Peter from all company roles and restore me as chief executive. I did not take the chief executive chair back immediately. The independent restructuring officer remained for 6 months. Gloria became interim board chair. Raymond supervised client recovery. I returned first as controlling shareholder and lender representative, with my authority visible and my limitations equally visible. Rowe had been weakened. We lost one municipal contract and several experienced managers. No court could order those people to trust us again. Bellwether restructured the loan rather than demanding immediate repayment. Owner distributions were suspended. Peter's son's company returned part of the money it had received and entered a settlement over unsupported invoices. We sold an unused warehouse through a competitive process, not to an insider, and used the proceeds to stabilize vendors. Within a year, Rowe refinanced Bellwether's debt with a new bank. Most of my reserve returned to me. Not all of it did. Legal fees, lost business, and emergency funding consumed an amount large enough to remain painful. That was the price of recovering something after the people closest to me had used it carelessly. The independent accounting traced the $800,000 distribution through Hearthstone. Some had paid Peter's personal debts. Some had funded deposits connected to Northline. Elaine had used a smaller portion to renovate Maple Hollow and pay her own expenses. Civil settlements restored what could be recovered. Insurance covered certain professional losses but not family betrayal disguised as authority. The criminal process moved more slowly. Peter and Martin were later charged in connection with fraud, forged records, attempted diversion of company assets, and false statements used to support the transactions. Martin's professional licenses became part of separate regulatory proceedings. The Northline deal collapsed, and its outside investors claimed they had not been told the true ownership dispute. The notary surrendered her commission while the state reviewed her conduct. She was not portrayed as the mastermind because she was not. She had ignored safeguards for convenience and allowed Peter's confidence to replace verification. That failure still carried consequences. Elaine's case was different because her evidence helped establish the document trail, but cooperation did not erase participation. She entered a plea to a forgery-related offense, received supervised probation, paid restitution, and was barred from managing my finances or company interests. Her civil settlement returned her Hearthstone distributions and any claim to Maple Hollow. I did not ask prosecutors to punish her more harshly. I also did not ask them to spare her. For months, our only communication passed through attorneys. Then Elaine wrote me a letter without excuses. She described caring for our parents, resenting the way I solved emotional obligations with checks, and letting Peter turn that resentment into permission. The final page contained one sentence I believed. I wanted what you had, and I called it what I deserved. I answered once. I told her she had been right about one thing. I had treated practical support as if it settled every human debt. I had allowed competence to become distance. But no neglected conversation gave her the right to replace my memory, sign my name, or lock me inside a false version of my life. I did not offer forgiveness on a schedule. Peter never apologized. Through his attorneys, he continued to describe the scheme as a rescue plan that became disorganized. Even after the recordings, records, and financial trail, he needed to believe my refusal had caused his choices. That was the blind spot that destroyed him. He mistook disagreement for incapacity, then created evidence of his own dishonesty each time he tried to control the story. The photograph beside the plastic fruit was recovered from the rental after the lease ended. The original image showed a refinancing dinner 7 years earlier. Peter had cropped the table, changed the date, and attached a caption claiming it documented the transfer. I kept the original. I destroyed the altered copy. Maple Hollow needed repairs after the rushed renovations. One afternoon, I found our grandfather's chestnut table wrapped in a storage building behind the house. Elaine had prevented Peter from selling it, though she never told me. I had it returned to the library. The first evening it was back, I sat beneath the marks Peter carved as a boy and reviewed a new estate plan with Miriam. The Land Preservation Trust remained, but I added a structured family process, independent advocates, and clear instructions that no relative could control medical access, finances, and company authority at the same time. When we finished, Miriam gathered the papers and asked whether I wanted the old photograph placed back on the table. I looked at my younger self holding a pen in the hand my family later claimed had signed everything away. No, I said. The next morning, I put my own keys beside the bowl where the plastic fruit had once been, opened the front door, and left it unlocked while the sun reached the library floor.